Life is a journey of exploration, learning, and growth. Basically, the world is full of fascinating stuff. Join me, Aristides Marousas, as I uncover interesting facts and discuss big ideas on Stuff Explained from the Motley Experience. Experience your world. Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Stuff Explained. This will be our second big idea episode. And as I've mentioned on previous episodes of Stuff Explained, I'm very interested in wellness of mind, body, and spirit. And I want to continue in that vein. And that is why this episode is dedicated to a discussion of the idea of forgiveness. So the reason I picked forgiveness as the topic of this episode for Stuff Explained, the big idea episode, is that it's a major part of any type of spiritual journey. So regardless of whatever religion you might follow, or whether you're just on a spiritual path as I have been these last couple of months, just like sort of finding yourself and your place in life and all of that great stuff, forgiveness is something that can be found across cultures, across religions, and it is that way because of how important it is in freeing yourself and moving on. Now, a lot of people have the misconception, and I was one of them, that if you forgive, it's a display of weakness on your part, that by forgiving, you are somehow absolving the other person or even yourself of some sin, whatever that might be, or some life situation. And because we feel like there are certain things that happen that are just so unfair, how could you possibly forgive someone or something that is just so unfair or unjust? And it's difficult. There are different situations, there are varying degrees of hurt, and even in those varying degrees, it varies even further depending on each person and their own thresholds and experiences and so on and so forth. But what forgiveness allows us to do is it gives us access to a tool of letting go. So again, forgiveness is not a weakness. It's not about the other person. It's not about them at all. It's more about you. It's for you. It's to free yourself from a destructive thought pattern. It is an exercise, as I said, that needs to be done regularly. This isn't a one and done type of thing. If you don't just forgive someone once and then that's it, it never becomes an issue again. If it bothered you enough, it's going to creep into your mind. It's going to bother you. You're going to feel disruptions emotionally and even mentally. And that's why you have to constantly go back and forgive and forgive and forgive. It's not forgetting, like I said, or looking the other way. It's a combination of acceptance that something happened, combining with compassion and maybe even understanding. And sometimes those last two are a bit difficult, but forgiveness itself is compassion. It may not necessarily be compassion for another person, if that's what you're forgiving or who you're forgiving. It's more compassion for yourself, telling yourself, I will no longer put myself through that situation on repeat. And I say this because, and science shows this, our bodies don't really know the difference. They're not good at telling the difference between what is a real life stimulus or what is just some sort of stimulation that comes from what you're conjuring in your mind. And when we are feeling stressed or we're reliving some sort of traumatic situation, whether it's embarrassment all the way up to some form of abuse, we are reliving that in our heads. Because if you're listening to this right now, the odds are that you're okay. You wouldn't be in a place where you could listen to this if in this very second, I'm not talking about your general life situation right now, if you're sick or if you're hurt. I'm saying in this second that you're listening to this, you are okay. You are alive. You are listening to this. Your attention is on this podcast. Hopefully, if this is what you're playing. So that just goes to prove that whatever it was that happened isn't happening anymore. It happened in the past. It happened yesterday, a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, in your childhood, whatever it might be. It's gone and done. And that doesn't minimize the pain that it caused you, whatever that might be. It doesn't minimize it whatsoever, but it's just for you to have in your head that, okay, that happened. And, maybe that person who did it, if it is a person, isn't even in your life anymore. Maybe they're, long gone. Maybe it's like through a divorce, or like the friendship ended, or whatever it might be. They might not even be in your life. But even if they are, if they're not still doing it to you in this moment, then it, for lack of a better term, it's not really a problem right now. The problem is that you're replaying it like a movie in your head, and you're causing yourself all the distress and ugly feelings that come with it, whether it's shame, hurt, sadness, frustration. There's a myriad of different emotions that you could be feeling depending on whatever the event was. And so when you forgive, the steps kind of look like this: is you take a step back when it feels like you're going off the tracks a little bit. And what I've learned that helps for me is out loud, I say, whoa, take a couple deep breaths, and that will usually calm me down a bit. And then when I do that, I can be a bit more observant of the thoughts in my head. Instead of living through the thoughts, I'm able to take a step back and actually, check those thoughts out. And okay, I'm reliving this scenario, but this scenario happened, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago. It happened a while ago, and I am right for feeling the way I feel. And you need to validate yourself that way, because if you're feeling a certain way, like you're feeling a certain way for a reason. So this isn't to shame you out of saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way anymore. So you do that, you accept that it happened. Okay, this event happened to me. I did this, whatever the case might be. I felt this kind of way, but you take a look around you right now. That's not happening to me. This person isn't here. I'm not embarrassing myself right now. I'm not being abused in this very moment, in this very second, right now. So there is no use. There's no reason for me to be reliving this in my head. You need to realize that you are causing yourself more harm than anything else. And once you get to that step, this is where, it gets a little bit tricky, where you then have to make the decision out loud. Sometimes for me, talking out loud helps a ton, to let go of the event and forgive. And if you want to forgive the other person, you can. If you're not ready for that yet, that's something that maybe you can get to a bit later. But the first person that you need to forgive is yourself. I forgive myself for continuing these thoughts. I forgive myself for beating myself up the way I have. Or whatever feelings that you have, you need to forgive yourself. I was doing the best I could in that situation. If it was something you should have left, if it was something that you did that you want to forgive yourself for, you were doing the best. If you're able to go a step further, you can also apply that same type of forgiveness to the other person, where if they hurt you in some way, they were doing their best at that time. Now, this is where people think it's a weakness, because by doing that, you're somehow saying that it's okay. You're not saying it's okay. You're just acknowledging that people in general try to do their best. Unfortunately, in some cases, their best isn't enough for the people around them. It's not good enough for the people around them. It's not good enough for you. And you need to acknowledge that. And it's really difficult to do depending on the situation. It helps sometimes to look at times in your life where you look back and like, oh man, I should have known better. And realize that you didn't know better. And that if you had known better, odds are you probably wouldn't have done whatever that was. And again, this is really difficult when we start talking about more serious things like abuse. But that person was doing the best that they could. And so you're accepting all of that. You're accepting that it happened. You're accepting that they were doing the best they could. And in most cases, when someone is hurt, so if you're hurt by someone else, it feels super personal, but a healthy person doesn't hurt someone else. So if you were hurt, it's because that person is hurt. And this isn't for you to feel sorry or to make you feel less about the pain that you had. This is more of the understanding and compassion part, understanding that humans are flawed, and sometimes, life sucks, and that's kind of maybe a bit of a crude way to put it, but honestly, it's the truth, and it's about how we react to things. And forgiveness is a tool that we have so that we can react in a better and healthier way. So we do that. We acknowledge what happened. We forgive ourselves. We, as best as we can, forgive the other person. And then we need to let go of the feelings we have. And this can happen through meditation. This can happen through deep breathing, which I find super beneficial. You breathe in, and then when you're breathing out, you just say like, let go. So let when you breathe in, and go when you say, when you breathe out. And in many cases, that has been beneficial for me. Try it out. Guided meditations are excellent. I always recommend guided meditations, so definitely go out and try those. And then you do your best. Just move on with whatever you're doing at that time. If you're at work, just try to go back to focusing on work. Maybe just get up and go for a quick walk somewhere. Getting your body in motion generally helps sort of release all that tension and energy and gets it out. And this is just a process that needs to be done repeatedly. It's not a one and done. It's not, just rip the Band-Aid off and you're done. Because this kind of trauma, again, from small scale embarrassment to large scale abuse, it's now embedded in your psyche to an extent. And what you're trying to do is almost rewire your brain in a way to not continually hit that playback button and loop whatever it was that was bothering you, because it's just negative and it just brings you down. And this isn't ignoring either. A lot of people think, that means I must ignore the situation, pretend it never happened. I must forget. You're not forgetting. It will come up again. It doesn't mean that you're going to completely avoid any triggers that do that. You might have to, depending on how bad the triggers are for a time. But eventually you're going to have to be able to be exposed to stuff and be able to just sort of let it, roll off your shoulders a bit, because the world's a pretty big place, and the odds of you running into someone or something that reminds you of a situation, whether it's on TV, something you hear, are likely pretty high. So it's just about removing yourself as far as possible from that. It might always bother you. It might be 20 years, 30 years after an incident, and something will still affect you, and it'll affect you deeply. And you might not have thought about it for a while, but there's just this one thing that brings it back up, and that's where you need to practice this act of forgiveness again. Stay up to date on all the latest content and announcements from The Motley Experience by visiting themotleyexperience.com/connect. Then enter your email address and become a member of the Insider Weekly Newsletter. Experience your world. Retcon Industries provides tailor-made music for professional wrestling, podcasts, trailers, and more, while also releasing their own original music. I personally have used Retcon Industries for professional wrestling and also for this podcast. All the music you hear in this podcast is by Retcon Industries. For more information, go to www.retconindustries.com or email my good friend Greg at retcongreg@gmail.com. You can also visit them on Facebook and Instagram at Retcon Industries. Something important to remember during all these steps is that you're perfectly right to feel the way you feel in the moment. No one's trying to take that feeling away. You shouldn't try to take that feeling away. You shouldn't try to logic your way out of the way you feel. You need to allow yourself to feel sad, hurt, angry, whatever. The important thing is to realize that whatever it was that caused you to feel that way is done. It's done. So honor those feelings, but realize that it's over with. You're okay right now. Take a couple deep breaths, try to get back into the present moment, practice some mindfulness, and then, move on, and then just carry on. So again, this might be easier said than done. I know it's been easier said than done for me, but when I have practiced it has really yielded positive results for me, and it's honestly just a burden off my shoulders. And unfortunately, sometimes I start feeling weighed down again, but if I just get back to whether it's a meditation, a breathing exercise, some form of mindfulness, reminding myself that I'm okay, that this happened, I forgive myself for being in that situation, for not taking myself out earlier, for beating myself up again and again, whatever it might be. And you just show that compassion for yourself. And if you are able to, show that compassion for the other person. Try not to ever wish someone ill. And again, that might be easy for me to say behind the microphone. I don't know what's going on in any of your lives, but if you're at a point where you can do it, do it. Hope that they learned their lesson. Hope that they won't do this again to anyone else. Hope that they won't do it to themselves. And generally just, hope for peace for the both of you. I just want to remind people that I'm in no way a trained expert or master of anything I just talked about, which might make you think, well, then what the hell did I just waste like 15 minutes of my life listening to this for? And you know what? Maybe you're right, but this whole idea of Stuff Explained is a journey. Some of the episodes are more learning based on interesting facts and things like that, and the big idea episodes, which are very close, near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to do more of them, are lessons that I've learned, life lessons as it were, that have really impacted me and changed my perspective of myself, of life around me, about how to interact with people, about the emotions and all this crazy stuff that goes on inside our minds and hearts. And because it's been so impactful to me, I feel like if I can share this with other people and I can help them, and maybe even, this might be a grand idea, alleviate some pain or give people a tool to use or an idea, a concept to use that might help them in some way that I wish I knew a little bit earlier, then that's fantastic. This is really just me sharing some very massive lessons. And we started the first big idea with wellness in general, and we kind of had like a brief explanation of wellness of mind, body, and soul. And now we're getting a little bit deeper into the different aspects of wellness. And in this part, forgiveness, it's more of like the mind and spirit. Because when you're able to practice forgiveness, when you're able to accept that something happened, and that doesn't mean that, I accept it, so I'm just going to roll over. No, when you accept, it means that you are fully aware and understanding that this is an event that happened. And when you accept, that allows you then to make a better choice. If you know, for example, that a friend continues to talk to you a certain way, if you accept that, hey, this is happening, someone that I consider a friend is speaking to me this way, and you accept it, you end up giving yourself choices. And sometimes those are difficult choices, but they're choices nonetheless of either you ignore it, and that's a choice in itself, doing nothing is a choice, you talk to them to try to change it, or if this is how you feel, you walk away from that. And those are three things that you can apply to any situation. You do nothing, you try to change it, or you walk away. And that's really all you can do. That's really anything anyone can do, is one of those three things. So you accept as part of forgiveness. You then show compassion to yourself first and foremost, because if you can't show compassion to yourself, you're never going to truly be able to give it to anyone else in a full and healthy way. So compassion for yourself, acknowledging that you feel the way you feel, and that's okay, but that you're doing things to remove yourself from that situation. Applaud yourself if you are taking those steps, and just treating yourself with love and kindness. And then comes the understanding part, which is kind of intermingled within compassion, where you understand that what may have happened to you was just the best anyone in that situation was doing. So if you had an embarrassing social situation, you didn't go out with the intention of doing that. It happened. Accidents happen. So just understanding that. And, if in a much more serious scenario, there's abuse going on, understanding that it's not okay that it happened. That's the acceptance part. But it did. Again, acceptance. Understanding that that person was acting out of whatever hurt or trauma they were going through. And this doesn't make it okay that they did it. It's just understanding that when people are hurt, they'll generally hurt others. And understanding that it was the best that they could do. And then where do you go from there? If it's a situation you're in now, those 3 actions: do nothing, try to change it, leave. If it's something that happened long ago in the past, then realize that it's only causing you distress now in this moment because you're replaying it in your head, and you need to take back control of your mind. And that happens through forgiveness. So instead of it coming up and you trying to push it into some dark corner in the recesses of your mind, you're letting it come up, you're looking it in the face, and you're saying, yes, this happened to me. This was awful. But it's done now. It's gone. I'm stronger for it. I've learned from it. And I forgive myself. If you can, forgive the other person or the situation. Realize that you're not weak for practicing forgiveness. Realize that this is an exercise. It's a muscle, essentially, that you have to keep using. And you might be hurting now and be trying to forgive, and it's something that might pop up tomorrow, an hour from now, a week from now, 5 years from now. You never know what might trigger that up. And just do the best you can, because that's all we can really do. Do the best we can to move on, come back to the present moment, realize that what's going on in our heads is not real. It's not real. What's happening around us is what's real. So if you're sitting in the car or at home or whatnot, driving, that's the only thing that's real, that you are sitting in that car driving. And please focus if you are on the road and the cars around you. But just take a couple deep breaths. You're okay right now. Everything is going to be okay. And that's it. Easier said than done, for sure. And I'll be the first to admit that. But to wrap this up, forgiveness, not a weakness. It's not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. It's to free yourself from a destructive thought pattern. It's an exercise that needs to be done regularly. And it's not forgetting or looking the other way. It's accepting a situation and showing compassion for yourself, for others, and understanding yourself and others. And then doing your best to release, let go of it, because it's not serving you anymore. You need to put that down and continue on with your life and try to open yourself up, because as much bad as there is out there, there's many, many beautiful things and experiences as well. And I know this all sounds really corny, and if I had listened to myself saying this more than 6 months ago, I'd be rolling my eyes and saying, what is this guy talking about? But from someone who's going through it and has had these experiences, it's there. It's something that I have to remind myself. It's not easy. You don't just live all of a sudden this like happy, positive life. It's something that you keep having to remind yourself. It's an exercise, just like going to the gym. You're not just going to lift a few weights and all of a sudden be jacked. You have to keep doing it. And even once you get jacked, if you stop, guess what? You're going to get soft again. And that's what forgiveness and a lot of this stuff in life is all about. So before I keep going, because I'll probably end up on some sort of tangent, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Stuff Explained, Big Ideas. As I've mentioned a few times now, this is sort of really what I'm excited about doing within Stuff Explained. Obviously, the whole podcast is something that I'm interested in doing, but sharing these big ideas that I think, that I know have helped me and I think can help other people. And, the big dreamer in me is like, maybe if more people talk about this, even if they don't necessarily believe it or buy into it fully, if you at least start talking about this and increase awareness of it, and when people need it, they'll reach out for it, and maybe bit by bit, person by person, the world can become a healthier and thereby better place. So see you next week. Stuff Explained is written and produced by me, Aristides Marousas. Music is produced by the talented Greg Massey of Retcon Industries. Visit themotleyexperience.com for more thoughtful original content, and you can also find links to the sources used for each episode of Stuff Explained. Like us on Facebook at The Motley Experience, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Motley Experience, and use the hashtag Stuff Explained. If you like this episode, leave a review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thank you for listening.